So, hello, welcome back. On the last class, let's start again. Hello, my name is Ricardo Montoya. I am your teacher for the 5th and 6th semester at the SEA in the University of Guanajuato. And in the last class, we finished checking time tenses. We were checking all the time tenses that we have. We were checking the simple present, the simple past, the simple future, the continuous time tenses, the perfect time tenses, and the perfect continuous time tenses. Okay, so today we're gonna do a little review, this is just going to be a little bit of everything so that you can contrast them. We're gonna be using all the time tenses that we have checked, and we're gonna be paying attention of how we're gonna pay attention to how we are following the rules. And everything is pretty much the same over and over and over and over again. Okay, so let's do this. It's gonna be a little longer, I think, than the other videos, but I hope it's gonna be very helpful because it's gonna let you know how everything works. So we have this. Okay, an affirmative statement. We have the simple present. Okay, on the simple present, well, in every time tense, to be honest, we have subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement. This is an affirmative statement. If you want to make a negative statement, subject, the auxiliary takes the negative, you have your verb, and then you have your complement. If you want to make a question, the only difference is the subject and the auxiliary, they switch positions. You start with the auxiliary, then the subject, then the verb, and then the complement. If you want to make an information question, you start with a question word, auxiliary first, verb, and complement. Okay? So for example, we have here the simple present. In the simple present, the auxiliary is do or does. So you have subject, I. Auxiliary, let's use I. Auxiliary, do. Verb, eat. Complement, cookies. I do eat cookies. This is the simple present. The only problem is, as you remember, in the simple present, we normally don't use the auxiliary in affirmative statements. So because this is an affirmative statement, we're not gonna use the auxiliary, okay? So this is it. I eat cookies. We have, again, let me just change the colors. We have the subject. We have the auxiliary, but we are not using it. We have the verb, eat. And we have a complement that is going to be a pink one, cookies. I eat cookies. Subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement. Very good. Perfect. No problem. Well, the only problem is that, the only problem is that in reality, we have two different auxiliaries. We have the auxiliary do, but for the third person, we have the auxiliary thus. I hope you remember this. He does. The verb, I don't know, eat again, and then cookies. It's the same sentence. The problem again is in the simple present, affirmative statements, we never use the auxiliary. So we don't have this. If we don't have the auxiliary, what do we have to do? We have to use an S. The verb has to take the S that the auxiliary is not having. So again, this is what we have. We have our subject. The auxiliary will be thus, but is not used. This is the auxiliary, but we are not using it. This thus has an S. Can you see it right here? I'm trying to make it a little bit more clear. Yeah, the S. Because we don't have that S, the verb is going to take the S, and we are going to say eats. He eats, and then the complement, cookies. I eat cookies. He eats cookies. Perfect. This is the simple present. Okay? What happened in the simple past? In the simple past, we're gonna have, again, text. Text. In the simple past, we're gonna have something like subject, the auxiliary is did, the verb is go, and the complement is whatever. To school. Okay, I did go to school. This is as an affirmative statement in the simple past. What is the problem? The problem is that we normally never use the auxiliary in affirmative statements. If we don't use the auxiliary, what is going to happen? Well, we have the subject, yes. We don't have the auxiliary. The auxiliary was here, but we don't have it. So what is going to happen? If I say I go to school is in present, the auxiliary is telling me that this action is in the past. If I don't have the auxiliary, okay, again, I did go to school. If I don't have the auxiliary did, if I don't have it, how do I show that this is past? Do you remember? Very simple. The verb has to change to the past form. In this case, the verb go is irregular. I need to use went, okay? So I say I went to school. Again, we have the subject, I. We have the auxiliary. The auxiliary is did, but we don't really have the auxiliary. And because we don't really have the auxiliary, the verb is going to have to take the past. It is in past. Why in past? Because I don't have the auxiliary. So I need a verb to show the past. And then whatever extra information is the complement. This is an affirmative statement in the simple past. The simple present and the simple past, they are very difficult. They are very difficult because there are some things that work different. Again, in affirmative statements, we never use do. But what happens if we want to use, let's say, a negative statement? If I want to use a negative statement, then what I need to do, I need to use the auxiliary. The auxiliary becomes mandatory because the auxiliary takes the negative. The auxiliary takes the negative. In the simple past again, the auxiliary takes the negative. So what happens? What happens is, let me check, that I need the auxiliary. The auxiliary is do, and do takes the negative, don't. The auxiliary takes the negative. I don't eat cookies. In the third person, does, and it takes the negative, doesn't. When I have doesn't, I don't need the S. This will be double present, double S. It is redundant and it's unnecessary. So he doesn't eat cookies, right? What happened here? I need the auxiliary because the auxiliary is going to take the negative, didn't. But I have the auxiliary showing past and I have the verb showing past. So this is unnecessary. This is kind of weird. Yeah. What do? The verb doesn't have to be in the past anymore. The verb now, the verb can be in normal form, go. I didn't go to school. Why did I do that? Again, very simple, because the auxiliary, I have the auxiliary is taking the negative. If I have the auxiliary, the verb doesn't have to change. If I change, I didn't went will be like doing double past. And that's again redundant and unnecessary. You never say, I didn't went, okay? So these are pretty much the rules of the simple present and the simple past. The auxiliary is not necessary in affirmative statements. In affirmative statements, again, we are not going to use the auxiliary. But in negative statements, It's mandatory. And in questions, it's mandatory. How do I make a question? This auxiliary switches positions with the subject. And I say, don't I eat cookies? Or normally in affirmative, do I eat cookies? Yes, you do, or no, you don't. Does he eat cookies? Yes, he does, or no, he doesn't. Check how, in this case, we don't really need the S. We never need the S when we have the auxiliary. In the past, what happens? Well, I use the auxiliary and I switch positions with the subject. First auxiliary and then subject. First auxiliary and then subject. Did I go to school? Go or went? What do you think? Go. Why? Because I have the auxiliary. When I have the auxiliary, it is really not necessary to do this. This is one problem with the simple present and the simple past. They are complicated because they never use the auxiliary in affirmative statements. Yeah. And when you don't have the auxiliary, sometimes the verb has to take an S, or sometimes the verb has to take the past. The past form normally is the verb plus D or the verb plus ED, but in this case, go is irregular. You don't say goat or anything like that, you say went. So we need to remember the irregular verbs in the past only for this. This is the only one that needs verbs in the past. The rest of them, they have the auxiliary, so they never use the verb in the past. There is another problem. Let me just erase most of this. There is another problem with the simple present and the simple past. I don't know if you remember, but in the simple present, the verb to be is different. Normally you say something like I. The verb to be has 3 conjugations in the present. I am, you are, and she is. In this case, I am, and then you have, well, normally subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement. The complement will be, I don't know, happy. Yeah, I do, I'm happy. This is okay in every time tense except the simple present or the simple past. In the simple present and in the simple past, this auxiliary, we are never, ever, ever gonna use it. In affirmative or in negative or whatever, we are never going to use the auxiliary. We are never going to use do when we have the verb, when we have the verb to be. If we have the verb to be, then we are never, ever going to use the auxiliary. Never. Yeah? What happens in the past? In the past is very similar. Okay. This is it. So in the past, it is very similar. In the past, you can say she, for example. The auxiliary normally will be did. Yep, let me just move this here. And the verb to be in the past has 2 conjugations. The verb to be in the past is always was or were. In the case of she was, and then whatever complement you want. Tired. Okay? The problem is, again, when you are using the verb to be, when you're using the verb to be in the present or in the past, you never, ever, ever, ever use the auxiliary. You never use the auxiliary. So it says, I am happy. It says, she was tired. So we have, what do we have? We have subject, verb, and complement. Subject, verb, and complement. We really don't have an auxiliary. In affirmatives, it's not really that much of a problem because the auxiliary, we were not using it anymore. Anyways, we were not using it. It's not really a problem. The problem is with negatives and with questions. With negatives and with questions, normally, if it was any other verb, you say don't, or you say didn't, Yeah. The problem is with the simple past and the simple present, this verb, the verb to be, never uses didn't, never uses don't, never uses doesn't. What happens? The verb is going to act as the auxiliary. So the verb is going to take the not. I am not, the verb takes the negative. If you don't have an auxiliary, the verb takes the negative. So I am not happy. She wasn't tired. Okay? That's what we have to do. Normally the verb doesn't take the negative, but in this case we don't have the possibility of using the auxiliary. What happened if you want to make a question? If you want to make a question, the verb is going to work as the auxiliary and is going to switch positions with the subject. If you don't have the auxiliary, then the verb is going to switch positions with the auxiliary. So you say, you say, am I happy? Yes, yes, you are, or no, you aren't. Was she tired? Yes, she was, or no, she wasn't. This is the problem with the simple present and with the simple past. They are the two most difficult ones to understand and to use because they have a lot of different things, okay? Again, they never use the auxiliary in affirmative statements, and they never, they never use the auxiliary in affirmative statements. If you don't have the auxiliary, the verb sometimes has to change. Maybe takes the S in the simple present, the third person, or maybe you have to change it to past. Go changes to went, eat to ate, do to did, try to tried, jump to jumped, etc. The other problem is the verb to be. The verb to be in the simple present and in the simple past never, ever, ever uses the auxiliary do, does, or did. The verb to be works as if it was an auxiliary. It's like doing double function. It's being the auxiliary and it is also being at the same time the verb, okay? So let me erase all of this and let's move on to the future. The future, you have again, affirmative statements, subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement. Negative statements, subject, the auxiliary takes the negative, then you have the verb, and then you have the complement. Questions, it is the same, but you reverse the order. If you make a question, you start with the auxiliary, subject, verb, and complement. If you have an information question, then you start with your question word, then your auxiliary, your subject, your verb, and your complement. And that's pretty much it. So what happens, for example, with the verb to be? If you're using the verb to be, it is very simple because you have your subject, I, you have your auxiliary is always will. It doesn't matter what the person is. If you say he is never wills, no. He will, it is always will. The S, this is a rule for the simple present, and this is not the simple present, this is the simple future. So it is always will. The verb is always in the base form, so you don't have to conjugate it. You say will go, you say will try, you say, will eat, you say will sleep, you say even will be. The verb to be, in the case of the simple future, is a normal verb. The only thing you have to do is just use be in the base form. He will be happy. Okay? This is my sentence in the simple future. It is very simple because what do I have? I have my subject. Yes, you always start with the subject in affirmative statements. Yep, this is the subject. Then what do I need? I need my auxiliary. My auxiliary is will. And the auxiliary is always mandatory in the simple future. In the simple future, it's not something that you can choose, you can decide, you can change. It is always there, it's necessary, okay? And then you have your verb. In the case of the simple future, the verb is always in the base form. The verb is always in the base form, okay? So I will be, and then whatever extra information you have is the complement, okay? So this is your complement, your complement, your complement, your complement, and your complement. So it is very simple to make changes. This is an affirmative statement. But what happens when you want to make a negative statement? What do you think? Easy. The auxiliary takes the negative. So instead of will, you say won't. He won't be happy. And that's perfect. That's it. That's the only thing you have to do. What happens if you want to make a question? Your auxiliary is going to switch positions with the subject. First the auxiliary, and then the subject. First the auxiliary, and then the subject. Will he be happy? Yes, he will, or no, he won't. It's super easy to use the simple future, okay? So these are the three simple time tenses. The simple present uses do or does, the simple past uses did, and the simple future uses will. But the present and the past, they are way more difficult. The simple future is very, very simple. You don't really have to do much differently, okay? Is everything good? Any questions? Well, I don't think you can do them right now. So let me just erase some parts of this. How do you make an information question? Very simple. Before the auxiliary, you switch positions, auxiliary subject, but before you use a question word. Why will he be happy? He will be happy because, and that's pretty much it. Now, when do you use the simple present? The simple present refers to things that we normally do, routines or things that are always true, okay? If we are speaking about normal things that we normally do, it is always the simple present. The simple past refers to actions that are finished and cannot change. They tend to be the main point of the story. If you're telling a story, the main part of the story, it is normally on the simple past. The future speaks of actions that haven't occurred yet. We use it for promises or prediction. He will be happy is my prediction or my promise, something that hasn't happened yet, but I foresee for the future. That's pretty much the way it works. Now we're gonna move on to the continuous or progressive time tenses. How do we use the continuous or the progressive time tenses? Again, the present continuous, you need your subject. Your subject is going to be, I don't know, he. The auxiliary is the verb to be, but the verb to be is conjugated in the present. You have them right here. Am, are, or is. In the case of he, is. And then you need a verb in the gerund. He's working from home. So this is your complement. And this is your sentence in the present continuous. He is working from home. How do you make it in the past continuous? The same sentence. Subject. The auxiliary is the verb to be, but not in present. It's not am, are, or is. Because this is a past continuous, you're using the auxiliary was or were. In the case of he, was. The verb is always in the ing form, in gerund, working from home. So he is working from home. He was working from home. Perfect. What happens if you want to use the future continuous? In the future continuous, you need your subject, again, he. The auxiliary is the verb to be, but it's not in present and it's not in past. It is in the future. The verbs don't really have a future conjugation, okay? You don't have a future conjugation. So what do? The only thing that you can do is use will plus be. Your auxiliary is two parts. Is will for the future and the verb to be, because that is the auxiliary of every continuous forms, okay? In the present continuous, am, are, or is. In the past continuous, was or were. In the future continuous, will be. And then you have your verb always with ing. So you say working from his house or from home, okay? From home. So you have three sentences. One in the present continuous, one in the past continuous, and one in the future continuous, okay? So you have subject, 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 yes? You have auxiliary, the verb to be in the present, auxiliary, the verb to be in the past, auxiliary, the verb to be in the future. In reality, you have two parts, will and be. This is the verb to be in the future. The verb with continuous forms is always with gerund. It is always ing. Working, working, working. And your complement is whatever extra information that you have in your sentence. From home, from home, from home. It was very simple, I hope. Subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement, subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement, subject, auxiliary, verb, and complement. It is always, always, always the same thing. What happens with the verb to be? The verb to be in the continuous forms is like any other normal regular verb. Instead of using working, you can say being. If you want to use the verb to be, well, the verb is always with ing, so you use being. Being. The verb to be is a normal verb. So you can use working, sleeping, thinking, trying, eating, cooking, whatever, even being. Is being, it sounds weird because it's the verb to be and it is the verb to be, but this is the auxiliary and this is the verb. So they have different functions. So they are not repeated. It is perfectly okay to say is being. Okay? This is the continuous forms. In the continuous forms, the verb to be is a normal verb. The only difference is in the simple present and in the simple past. The simple present and the simple past, they work differently. Okay? So what happens if you want to make any of these sentences negative? The auxiliary takes the negative. So he is working from home. He isn't working from home. He was working from home. He wasn't working from home. In this case, we have the auxiliary, which is two parts, 1 and 2. What we were saying is that when you have an auxiliary that is more than one word, only the first word is going to take the negative. So you say won't, he won't be working from home. Only the first part takes the negative. You never say he will be not working from home. It is only the first part that you have to change. He is working, he isn't working. He was working, he wasn't working. He will be working, he won't be working. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What is the meaning of them? The present continuous, you use it for things that are happening in this moment. Things that are in progress at this time. He is working from home right now. In this moment, as we speak. He's working from home today. He's doing that right now. The past continuous. You use it to speak about things that were happening then, in that moment, in the past. You use it to give context. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you a story about the other day I found 500 pesos. So I was working from home and I was doing this and I was doing that and I found 500 pesos, okay? When I say I was working from home, that is not the central part of the story. That is just the context, okay? So you're using the past continuous to speak about the context. The future continuous, sorry, what does it mean? He will be working from home. It means in the future, I don't know, like in September, I think it's okay. In September, this action will be in progress. He will be working from home, but not now. He will be working from home in September. So in a month or in 2 months or in 2 weeks, he will be working from home. Right now, he's not doing that. This is in the future. The future continues. Okay? I hope that's okay. So again, how do you, well, as you see, we are following the same rules over and over and over again. The rules have never changed. They continue to be the same rules. Yeah? So we're going to be checking if we have the same rules. These are the rules. We have them right here. These are the rules that we are always using. How do we make a question? Your auxiliary changes positions with your subject. Is he working from home? Yes or no. Your auxiliary switches positions with your subject. Was he working from home? Yes, he was, or no, he wasn't. What happens here? In this case, again, we have two parts of the auxiliary. When this happens, when we have an auxiliary that is 2 or 3 or even 4 words long, only the first part takes the negative, and only the first part switches positions with the subject. So it says, will he be working from home? Okay? If you want to make an information question, you start with your question word. Why will he be working from home? He will be working from home because blah, 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 because of this and because of that. That's pretty much the thing that we are doing. Is it okay? I hope this is okay. These are the continuous forms. This is how we use them, okay? Let me erase some of this. I'm gonna use the eraser, I think is faster, because we're gonna move now to the perfect forms. In the perfect forms, we have the present perfect. In the present perfect, you can say, I have, the auxiliary is always have, and the verb is always in the past participle. Gone to France. I have gone to France means in the past, at some point, I went to France. It is an experience that you have. It doesn't matter how many times or how long ago it was. If you say, I have gone to France, maybe it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, maybe it was last month. It is not important. Maybe you have gone one time, or maybe you have gone a million times. It is not important. If you have gone to France, it means that you have the experience, okay? So you can say, I have gone to France, or in the third person, he or she, you don't use have, because this is the present perfect. It uses the rules of the present. In the present, the third person has an S. So has. He has gone to France. Okay? So this is what you have. In the present perfect, I have gone to France, or he has gone to France. In the past perfect, you can say you, or whatever subject you want. The auxiliary is again the verb have, but is not in the present. It is in the past. Have in the past is have, okay? And then the verb is always in the past participle. You have eaten, and then whatever you want, sushi. Well, sushi. You had eaten sushi. This is your sentence in the past perfect. Super simple, okay? What about the future perfect? In the future perfect, you need, again, your subject, we, I don't know, whatever you want. The auxiliary is the verb have, but the verb have in the future. The problem with have is that we don't really have verbs in the future. So how do you use a verb in the future? If you want to say watch in the future, you say will watch. If you want to say be in the future, you use will be. If you want to use have in the future, you use what? Will have. We will have. And then your verb is always in the past participle, seen, and then your complement. The movie. Okay? So when do you use the past continuous, sorry, the past perfect and the future perfect? The past perfect is used to speak about the past of the past. This is for antecedents, for things that happened prior to something. It's like having two different pasts, a remote past and a recent past, okay? In the remote past, something previous to the recent past. Yesterday, I wasn't surprised. Why weren't you surprised yesterday? Because I had eaten sushi. Many times in the past, I had eaten sushi. That's an experience that I had before yesterday. So yesterday, I wasn't surprised, okay? You're using it to speak about things that happened previous to things that are already over. The simple past is the recent past, and the past perfect is the far away, the remote past. You had eaten sushi, it means before the past. 3 days ago, 3 years ago, before something, yeah? You normally use one in the simple past and one in the past perfect. The simple past is closer to you now, and the past perfect is remote to that, okay? Yesterday, I ate 10 tacos. That is the recent past. Yesterday, I ate 10 tacos. Why did you eat 10 tacos? Because I haven't eaten anything in the whole day. Porque no había comido nada en todo el día. And the future perfect, you use it for actions that will be finished in the future. Right now, it means right now this action hasn't happened. Tomorrow I will go to the movies. Tomorrow I will go to the movies at 5 p.m. So tomorrow in the night, tomorrow at 10, I will have seen the movie. So tomorrow in the night, the action of seeing the movie will be finished. Right now, it is in the future. At 5 o'clock is going to be in progress, and by 10 o'clock, it will be over. So tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I will have seen the movie. I will have finished watching the movie. Okay? So what do we have? Again, we have pretty much the same things. We have subject, 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 and subject. All of them are affirmative statements. So all of them, they start with the subject. Your auxiliary in the in the present perfect is have or has, depending on the subject. Your auxiliary in the past perfect is had. It is always had. It is the only possibility. And in the future, your auxiliary has two words, will and have, because have doesn't have a future form. We don't have a conjugation for the future. So we say will have. And then the verbs, when you are using perfect forms, the verbs are always in the past participle. Gone, gone, eaten, seen. This is a problem with the perfect forms. The problem is that many times, well, all of these verbs, for example, all of them, they are regular verbs. So this is a bit of a problem. Normally, regular verbs, they end with the or with ed, but all of these, they are irregular. So you need to study irregular verbs. You need to study a table, and you need just to memorize which verbs are regular and which are irregular, and how to tell the difference. I mean, what is the difference between some and the other, okay? Again, you have, right here, you have complement, 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 and complement. What happens if you want to use the verb to be? The verb to be in the perfect forms is a normal verb. So the only thing you do is here you use your verb, you use the verb to be, but in the participle. He has been to France. Perfect. He has been to France. That's perfect. The verb to be is a normal verb. Only the simple present and only the simple past, they treat them differently. In the rest of the time tenses, the verb to be is a normal verb. You had been sushi. Well, that's kind of weird, but you can use the verb to be. We will have been the movie. Okay, kind of weird, but technically that's okay. I mean, you can use the verb to be as if it was any other verb. Remember, the only exceptions are the simple present and the simple past. Now, again, we know the rules. So we know how to change these sentences into negatives. How do you change these sentences into negatives? Very simple. The auxiliary takes the negative. So I have gone to France. I haven't gone to France. He has gone to France. He hasn't gone to France. You had eaten sushi. You hadn't eaten sushi. We will have seen the movie. Again, we have two words. What happens when our auxiliary is two words? Only the first one takes the negative. We won't have seen the movie. Okay? Remember that when our auxiliary is more than one word, only the first one switches positions with the subject to make questions, and only the first one takes the negative. So we won't have seen the movie. And that's pretty much everything. You don't really have to do anything else. So how do you make questions? Again, following the rules. The only thing that you need is first the auxiliary and then the subject. So have is the auxiliary or the auxiliary, and you change it for the subject. Have I gone to France? Yes, you have, or no, you haven't. Has he gone to France? Yes, he has, or no, he hasn't. Had you eaten sushi? Yes, I had, or no, I hadn't. In the future continuous, future perfect, we have two words. What do we do? When our auxiliary is two words, only the first word switches positions with the subject. And we say, will we have seen the movie? Will we have seen the movie? No, we won't, or yes, we will. No, we won't have, yes, we will have seen the movie. Okay, that's pretty much it. The perfect forms are, they always use have, has, have, or will have. Yeah, the continuous forms is the verb to be. The perfect forms is the verb have. The verb is always in the past participle. The verb is always in the gerund. That's pretty much the way they work. So let me erase all of this, and let's check finally the perfect continuous time tenses. They are a little bit more, they are a little longer and probably a little bit more complicated, but let's see. You can say I. The auxiliary for the present perfect continuous is, you have it here, have been. Have been, and the verb is always in gerund. I have been going to the gym. I have been going to the gym. Or you have another possibility, the third person of the singular. The third person of the singular, let's change it to she because we need to include more. Okay, the third person of the singular, it is the present perfect continuous. So the verb is in the third person form in the present. So she has been. This is the auxiliary. The verb is always with ing. Going, and then the complement, the gym. Okay, I have been going to the gym. She has been going to the gym. That's pretty much it. When do you use them? You use it for actions or routines that you started in the past and that you continue in the present. When you say, I have been going to the gym, it means in the past I started going and today I continue going. I have been going to the gym for 2 months. 2 months ago I started going and today I continue to go. It is the same thing. I continue doing the same thing. Okay? She has been going to the gym. Okay? 3 months ago she started going and today she continues going to the gym. So these are for routines that you started in the past and that you continue to use in the present. You continue to do them in the present. They are routines that you haven't quit. Then the past perfect continuous. How do we use the past perfect continuous? You don't need to use your subject, but the auxiliary is not have been or has been. It's have been in the past. So have been. The only thing that you do is you change the auxiliary to the past form. And then the verb continues to be in gerund, going to the gym. I have been going to the gym. This is the past perfect continuous. When do you use the past perfect continuous? You use it for actions that you started doing in the past and that you stopped doing in the past. Like 1 year ago, I started going to the gym, and 1 month ago, I stopped going to the gym. So I have been going to the gym. Yes, like in the past I have been going, but now I don't go anymore. This is like a routine that I picked up sometime in the past, like in the far away past, in the remote past, and I stopped doing in the recent past. That's pretty much the way it works. And then we have finally the future perfect continuous. In the future perfect continuous, the subject is whatever, I, you, he, she, it, a personal pronoun, and then your auxiliary is going to be have been, but in the future. Again, we cannot conjugate verbs in the future. We don't have futures in English. So what do? We use will, have, been. Yeah? This auxiliary is 3 words long. It is always will, it is always have, and it is always been. Remember that after will, the verb is always in the base form. So even if you have the third person, if you say he will have been, it is always will. Remember, never wills. The future doesn't have that, and never has. Because after will, the verbs are always in the base form. So will have been. And then we have our verb always in ing, going, under the complement. To the gym. He will have been going to the gym. This is a sentence in the future perfect continuous. Okay? So again, what do we have? We have, all of them are affirmative statements. So all of them start with the subject, with the subject, with the subject, with the subject. The subject is the doer of the action, the person doing the action. Then we need to have the auxiliary. The auxiliary is two words, have and been. Or in the present perfect continuous, it can be has and been, depending on the subject. I have been, you have been, we have been, they have been, you have been. She has been, it has been, he has been. Okay? In the past perfect continuous, the auxiliary is always have been. Have been. And in the future perfect continuous, we have an auxiliary that is made up by three different words. Will have been, will have been. And then we have a verb and gerund, going, 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 and going. And then finally, we have the complement. The complement is, in this case, is just a complement of place. It's telling you where you were doing the action, or towards where you were doing the action. I have been going to the gym. She has been going to the gym. I have been going to the gym. He will have been going to the gym. Okay, again, present perfect continuous. I have been going to the gym. I started going a few months ago and I continue going. I have been going to the gym. I have been going to the gym. I started going a few months ago, but I don't go anymore. I stopped. The future perfect continuous. He will have been going to the gym. I haven't started yet. Next week, I will start going to the gym. And in 1 month, I will have been going to the gym for 3 weeks. Yes? I will start going to the gym in September. I haven't started yet. Today, I haven't gone to the gym. In September, I start. So in November, I will have been going to the gym for 2 months. Yeah? This is just for future routines that I will have been doing. Then finally, well, we have the same problem. How do we make them negative? The same way we always have. We need to follow the same rules. The auxiliary takes the negative. The problem here is that we have 2 words for the auxiliary. What happens when we have 2 words for the auxiliary? Only the first one takes the negative. I haven't been going to the gym. She hasn't been going to the gym. Remember, only the first part takes the negative. I hadn't, only the first part, I hadn't been going to the gym. In this case, we have 3 parts. When you have 2 parts, only the first part takes the negative. When you have 3 parts, it is the same rule. Only the first part takes the negative. He won't have been going to the gym. And the rest continues to be the same. Subject, auxiliary with negative, verb, and complement. Super simple. We are following the same rules for all 12 sentences, okay? And then what happens if we want to make them questions? Okay, let me erase all of this. If you want to make them questions, first goes the auxiliary and then the subject. So you need to switch positions between the subject and the auxiliary. But in this case, your auxiliary, again, is 2 parts. What happens when you have 2 parts? Only the first one switches positions with the subject. So it says, sorry, it looks like a 2. Okay, have I been going to the gym? You don't change the block. You don't say have been I. You only say have I been going to the gym? Yes, you have, or no, you haven't. In this case, only the first part switches positions with the subject. Has she been going to the gym? Yes, she has, or no, she hasn't. In this case, again, we have 2 parts of an auxiliary. What do we do? The whole block or only the first one? You're right, only the first one. Had I been going to the gym? Yes, you had. No, you hadn't. In this case, this is a little bit more complicated because we have 3 parts. The auxiliary is 3 words. What happens when the auxiliary is 3 words? Only the first word is the one that switches positions. Only this goes here. Will he have been going to the gym? Will he have been going to the gym? Yes, he will, or no, he won't. If we want to make an information question, we start with a question word. Why will he have been going to the gym? Well, he will have been going to the gym because blah, 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 blah. And they tell you the reason. This is pretty much all 12 time tenses in English. Okay, check this. The most important part is that we always use the same variations. The structure is respected in every one of the 12 time tenses. The two most difficult ones, the two ones that have some exceptions, are the simple present and the simple past. They are the two most difficult ones because you have some exceptions that you have to remember and then you have to use. So be careful with those two. But the rest of them, as you can see, from the simple present to the future perfect continuous, they continue to have the same structure. The structure hasn't changed at all. Does it make sense? It's kind of weird. Is it kind of weird? Okay. Now, what is the meaning of all of this? Okay, se los voy a decir en español. ¿Cómo se traducirían? El presente simple, yo corro. El pasado simple, yo corrí. El futuro simple, yo correré. El presente continuo, yo estoy corriendo. El pasado continuo, yo estaba corriendo. El futuro continuo, yo estaré corriendo. El presente perfecto, yo he corrido. El pasado perfecto, yo había corrido. El futuro perfecto, yo habré corrido. Los perfectos continuos, el presente perfecto continuo, yo he estado corriendo. En pasado perfecto continuo, yo había estado corriendo. En futuro perfecto continuo, yo habré estado corriendo. Esos son los 12 tiempos y así es como se usan. Después de esto, bueno, todavía nos falta verlos en voz pasiva. Los vamos a volver a ver todos, pero en voz pasiva. No se preocupen, ya no va a ser tan tardado. Nada más vamos a explicar cómo funciona y vamos a asegurarnos de seguir las mismas reglas. Y nos falta hablar también de modales y semimodales, que son un poquito diferentes a como usamos en el español. En el español tenemos ciertas conjugaciones, ciertas maneras de decir las cosas. En inglés vamos a usar una cosa que se llama modales y semimodales. Si no saben cómo se usan, bueno, yo creo que más o menos deben saber. Todo el mundo ha usado can, ha usado should, ha usado must, pero vamos a volverlo a explicar todo desde el principio para que sepan cómo va a funcionar. ¿Ok? Bueno, esto es todo por hoy. Esta fue una clase un poquito más larga de lo habitual. Si tienen cualquier duda, cualquier pregunta, apúntenla por favor en su libreta y la tratamos durante las sesiones interactivas. Y cualquier otra cosa, bueno, me pueden mandar un mensaje, ya sea por el grupo de WhatsApp, por la aplicación que estemos usando, no estoy seguro cuál va a ser, o por medio de los mensajes de YouTube también. Okay? So, thank you very much. You can go and rest, go eat something, try to relax. I think you deserve it, okay? So, thank you very much, and I will see you next